morning at the dome. The time will be 1, 2, 3, 4. Exactly.
Woke up this morning without a warning. Words were still ringing in my head. It came, it seemed within my dream, a gentle voice, and this is what it said. Stop now, you got to stop and listen to what I say. Stop and feel that you've been missing.
Welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio with Tom and Ramon. We are recording this on, wow, it's March already, March 2nd of 2015. Is this going to be another one of those years that just blazes by, Ramon?
Probably.
I mean, last year it was like, did it really happen?
The last 10 years just slipped by.
Well, 2012 seemed to be like almost regular time. I mean, it was a little faster than normal, but 2013 and 14, it's just like a blink of my eye and it was gone. Wow.
Yeah. You start to wonder because, I still hear like young kids saying how slow, like they want to be done with school and stuff like that, and it's so slow for them. But for us, it's just like speeding up.
Is that age thing?
That's why I'm wondering, is time really speeding up, or is it because we're all getting older?
Yeah, I don't know. It might all just be a matter of perception.
Yeah.
I look at the clock and the seconds go by just as fast now as they used to, but you put it all together, it's just out there.
Yeah, I find a day, like, especially if you're off, it's like 10 in the morning and then next thing you look, it's 7 p.m.
Yeah. So what's going on in the world, Ramon? You got a couple things you want to touch on tonight before we get rolling?
Yeah, actually I have a few things. Paris has turned the Eiffel Tower into a wind energy machine, which is really exciting, using what you have.
They put a big windmill on the side of the tower, or what?
Yeah, it's not like your stereotypical windmill. It's more like the curved, kind of long stick, and as the wind hits it, it turns. It's inside the tower, so it's not something that is an eyesore. So it's not like sticking out of the tower. Placed on the monument, second level, 400 feet off the ground, the turbines can capture the wind from every direction and generate enough electricity to power the tower's commercial operations.
Wow.
Not directly, though. The 10,000 kilowatts of electricity produced by the turbines flow into the Paris grid.
Wow. That's impressive. 10,000 kilowatts?
Yeah, let me see if I read that correctly. That's 10,000 kWh, right?
Wow. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's a lot of power.
It's a nice generator.
Yeah, and here's something else when it comes to wind. Artificial wind trees use micro-turbine leaves to generate electricity. So this is not a real tree, but it looks like a real tree, and the leaves are little turbines. They're like long. So what do they look like? Actually, they look like it's the shape of a corn. Would be the best description. Great design can be recognized at a first glance, and this next one is pure genius. We are talking about this amazing wind turbine which looks like a tree. Integrating perfectly into the surroundings, the wind turbine generates energy. in an eco-friendly way, using a natural resource, and has a pleasant aspect in contrast with other classical turbines. The technology was developed by a French company called New Wind, and the look of the wind turbine is identical with those of trees. The efficiency of the products is guaranteed by the fact that it is functional in low wind too. Something we can say about other products from this category. But still, the best feature of the product is its looks and the fact that it doesn't interfere with harmony of nature, as it manages to blend in perfectly. I'm trying to find where it says how much power this thing generates, but it doesn't say. The funny thing about the French, I think for the last 15 years, I've seen a lot of really, really good ideas come out of the French when it comes to wind energy and air cars. Their main element must be wind, because they're always coming out with these great ideas. But this is something like a regular tree that can fit right in your front yard, backyard, and it's not like the traditional turbines that it's so big. I remember a friend of mine had one close to his house, and they had to take it down because whenever a storm came through, one of the blades would take off. So it became too dangerous, and then there was a big complaint about it harming the birds flying by, crashing into it and stuff like that.
Right.
But these don't do any of that, So
I know I've driven by or through a bunch of the wind farms down in California, and they are definitely a big eyesore. I mean, you've got these huge fields full of these wind turbines, and they're just ugly. I mean, they got them stuck out in the middle of the desert, so it's not like they're right in the middle of town, but they're definitely kind of an eyesore. Yeah.
So, the last thing, I just want to toot my own horn there. In the science fiction and fantasy, my first book made it to number 9, but it slipped back down to actually number 20 now. So just in the fantasy section, not the whole thing. So that's exciting. Thank you. And the last thing I want to say before we bring our guests, because this story actually has to do with our guests, and I recently had brought some products. One was called the African Dream Bean, and the other one was Mugwort, and the other one is called just Dream Herb. And the other night, 2 nights ago, I actually took some of the Mugwort and the Dream Herb together and smoked some of it. And I went to bed, and it was weird because it wasn't like a normal out-of-body experience, because usually I can remember those really good, but it felt like an out-of-body experience, and there was the whole thing of being lucid and being able to control and know that I was dreaming, and I was doing the dial thing where, it looks too dark, so I turn it up to get some light so I can see better and stuff like that.
Adjusting the environment.
Yeah, and that's just, you imagine that you have 2 dials in front of you, and you just turn it for the light, and you just keep turning until you get the right lighting. So, yeah, adjusting the environment around you. So, speaking of, who do we have?
We have got Darryl Berry Jr. with us tonight. Darryl has been a longtime practitioner, researcher, and observer of all things metaphysical, mystical, and cutting edge, including the out-of-body experience or astral travel, extraterrestrial life, consciousness development, channeling, telepathy, spirituality, including A Course in Miracles, and fourth density thought. He started astral travel at about 4 or 5 years old, And since then, he's met the deceased, interacted with extraterrestrials, traveled through time, traversed outer space, and interacted with spiritual beings. He's currently publishing books and building a center called Next Density, through which to share what he's learned to help facilitate the progress of the human race. His first book, Travel Far, A Beginner's Guide to the Out-of-Body Experience, including first-hand accounts and comprehensive theory and methods, will be published June 20th of this year. He's got pre-orders available on his website, and that is www.darrylberryjr.com. That's Darryl, DarrylBerryjr.com. Welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio, Darryl.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, man, you know what? There's so many of us that are on this spiritual, mystical life path, trying to figure out who and what we are, what we're here for, what this is all about, and what are our capabilities. What can we do within this place that we find ourselves? And I know from my own personal experience and so many people that we've talked to that one of the big catalysts that put me on this path was the proverbial 2x4 upside the head that got me moving and got me asking questions. Now, just reading your bio here, this is saying that you started to have the out-of-body travel experiences very early in your life. Would you give us some background on how this all developed for you? And I mean, it sounds like you didn't have to have the 2x4.
Well, I mean, I guess you can say that was my 2x4. Like my introduction into metaphysics was my first out-of-body experience. When I was about 4 or 5 years old, around dusk, around the evening time of the day one day, I started to feel sort of tired and lethargic. And I told my mom I'm not feeling too well. I'm going to go ahead and lie down and get some rest, and hopefully I'll feel better later. And I went to lay down, and, you know, I remember walking to the bed. As I got closer to the bed, my body started feeling heavier and heavier. I finally plopped myself down on the bed and went to sleep. And after an indeterminate amount of time, I suddenly felt better. And I got up to go tell my mom I was feeling better, since, you know, previously I had told her I wasn't feeling well, so she wouldn't worry. And I got up out of bed as normal and walked to the door. But a strange thing happened when I went to open the door. My hand just whoosh went through the doorknob. And I tried to open the door again, and my hand went through the doorknob. And I looked back on the bed, and I noticed a lump on the bed with some sheets over it, which I surmised was my physical body. And that was my introduction into the experience.
Wow. You know, I had a spontaneous out of body when I was 5, and it was you know, I didn't put anything together at that age. I had no idea what the hell happened. I thought it was just a trippy dream, and but in retrospect, and this experience stayed with me my whole lifetime. I mean, I remembered it vividly through my whole lifetime. But I just kind of pushed that back on the back burner and left it alone, and never really thought about it much again until, you know, I was in my 20s and got the 2x4. So is this something that was a regular experience for you? Did you start having these after this first experience, where was it something that continued to happen for you?
Yes, it was. For many years, I would have experiences every night. And I think one of the things that triggered, you know, when I started thinking about everything that happened, one of the things that triggered, I think, my uprising experiences was my infatuation with flying. And I'd be infatuated with, like, Superman. And I remember I used to watch Mighty Mouse and shows like that. And one time I had a flying dream. And I wanted to continue having flying dreams because they were so fun. So what I started doing was, I would, every night when I went to sleep, and I was so excited to try to fly again, that I would be anxious. I mean, I would be in bed early, ready to go to sleep and try to fly. So I would go to sleep and visualize myself flying, and concentrate and visualize myself flying. And I intuited that if I could just focus strong enough as I go to sleep, maybe I could make myself continue to fly as I go to sleep. And that's what happened. I will visualize myself flying, and eventually I will start to be able to lay down for sleep and visualize myself flying so much that I would not have a break in consciousness. And my physical body would go to sleep, and I would go to flying throughout the night. And that's when my experiences started to accentuate. And I started to have an uprise of floating out of body and flying throughout the night, and it just progressed from there. So I kind of stumbled upon an out-of-body technique early, and it took off.
Wow.
Yeah, and especially at that age where your imagination is completely open and it's not, you haven't been taught the you can't do that yet kind of mentality, where I think for a lot of people, they try to get into this once they're older, and it becomes a little more difficult. Not impossible, but more difficult than, for example, a 5-year-old kid. You know, that kind of reminds me of also my experience, because I had my first out-of-body experience when I was like 3 or 2, and mine was more trying to get the baby bottle in the hand going through. But I didn't even think about it as a kid. Did you find that in your teenage years that became more difficult, or you just kept doing it and kind of mastered it?
Well, I mean, I would say in my later teenage years, it became more difficult, most of my teenage years, not because the experience became less difficult, as in I started to less believe in it, or people started telling me it was a dream or anything. It just became less difficult because it became less of a focus. Like, I started to be involved in girls and school, and my intention just wasn't as focused on it. You know, so I would say like the majority of my experiences were between the ages of, say, 5 and 12. And as I started to get into my teenage years, I started to realize what it was and started to read on it a bit. But still, even though I did a lot of reading on it, my attention wasn't as much on practicing it. You know, I remember in high school, I was like in the band, and I was like in the choir, and I was in the drill team, and I did so many things that my attention wasn't on it as much. But what stuck with me was the potential. Like, and as I got older, it started to be more of a purposive thing. Like, when I wanted to investigate something, if something really motivated me, then I would practice again and go investigate it. But I would say, like, in my let's say preteens to early teens, at one period I got to the point to where I did not have a break in consciousness anymore, and it was quite trippy because the world started to seem sort of quasi-real. Like, it started to become like there was not a dream world or a non-physical world, and it wasn't a physical world. It started to become one blend, which was very strange. And that's when I started to kind of slow down a bit, just because it was just it seemed so strange, you know. But as I got older, you know, this became more of a purposive thing when I really wanted to investigate something.
So when it became a blend for you, did you feel like that was more of a reality, or did you think you were losing your mind, or it just scared you a little bit?
I think it was just disconcerting. I think it just takes getting used to. I remember reading about someone's experiences where they got to that point, and he almost drove his car off a ledge because he wasn't aware if he was dreaming or physical. So I guess it was just it just seemed odd. I think it's just something. I really think that that's something that the human race is developing towards, but maybe I just wasn't ready. Like, another experience I had, I would say I guess I was in my late teens. And I was reading the works of these two channelers. They channel these two beings named Oren and Dabin, and they wrote this book called Personal Power Through Awareness that talked about telepathy. And I experimented with telepathy, and I got to the point that I was able to hear people's thoughts, and I got to the point to where, like, most people don't realize it, but whenever, I guess not whenever, but oftentimes when we interact with people, there's a subconscious telepathic communication with that person. So let's say you might be speaking with someone, and you're talking about the weather, and you might hear the person subconsciously think, I hope he doesn't notice, my shoes or something. There will be some subconscious thought, and then the person might say something. Oh my gosh, I scuffed these shoes right here. And it's pretty odd, and even that started to feel kind of overwhelming because I think it's just out of habit. We're so used to having a great demarcation between waking and sleeping, and that's why I think so few people are aware of the out-of-body experience, because so few people are aware of their dreams. It's just the way our society is built. We have a great demarcation. You're awake, and that's real, and whatever you experience in sleep, that's a dream, and don't worry about it. Even though we have psychoanalysis, and they know that our dreams are a great reflection of what's in our mind. I mean, that's the basis of psychoanalysis. But still, it hasn't penetrated our consciousness as a whole. So I think it's a part of our progression as a human race to begin to be able to incorporate that level of fluidity of consciousness in our normal everyday being. So, that's one of the reasons why I'm talking about it, and to help spread awareness and to help push us in that direction. It's just contrary to the habit that we've made of having such a great demarcation, and that's where the idea of density comes from. Like third density is very demarcated, very segregated. Everything is seen separate. We have all kind of different ways of separating each other from each other because of our skin color, or because of, the country we live in, or because of how much money we have. Everything is separation, and we do the same thing with our consciousness. We separate. So as we move into this this new density, the fourth density, to be more about integration. And I think that's one of the integrations that will happen. We will learn to balance the non-physical and the physical to the point that we don't have to have such a great demarcation between them in order to feel, grounded.
Exactly, and that's exactly why we do this show, is to helping that blending to happen here on this planet. I mean, there's so many people that are coming online in this time on planet Earth. When I say coming online, I'm talking about those abilities that are becoming active, and they're starting to put the pieces together. We're starting to understand that this isn't crazy. The fact that I talked to a UFO the other day, that's not crazy, because you have other people out there now that are sharing their experiences about all these bizarre and mystical and miraculous events. I mean, for lack of a better term, these are all, the supernatural events, and the key word there is natural, that people are experiencing. It's part of who and what we are, and these things are coming online on the planet now, and we have got to get a hold of them. We've got to get a grasp and understanding of what the hell is going on here, or we're going to end up just, we'll implode if we don't have a release and an understanding of our current situation.
Oh, the mailman.
I mean,
one
of the things that the out-of-body experience greatly did for me was expand my perspective. Like the fear of death, like the idea around death. There's so much fear around that. You could not only learn that you survived death, but you can learn that your relatives and friends survived death. You could become consciously aware directly of extraterrestrial life. I really think that if more people were able to do it, I mean, that in itself would change the nature of the world. As we start to become aware, like one of the biggest demarcations that we have is our physical body in the world. Your skin color is that way, and mine is that way, or your culture is that way. But imagine if we all experienced ourselves as consciousness. I remember one experience I had as a kid. I suddenly became aware in the out-of-body experience. This was around a period of time when I used to just float out of body spontaneously every night. And usually I would float out of body in my non-physical body, and I wasn't even aware that there was anything different. But in one particular night, I was floating up towards the ceiling on the other side of the room from my bed, which was strange. But then I noticed I didn't have a body. I was just a point or focus of conscious awareness, like a field of awareness that was floating in the air. And I directed my attention towards my bed, and I saw my non-physical body floating in the air. And then I looked on the bed, and I saw my physical body on the bed, right? So I realized that we have a physical body. We also have a non-physical body that can leave the physical body. And we also have our essence that can leave the non-physical body. And that essence is the same with everyone. You know, anyone who learns how to go out of body and gets out of body, and they can leave their non-physical body, and you'll be that same essence. And you can realize that everyone is the same. You know, all the different ways that we demarcate ourselves by race and class and nation and position, all of those things are really meaningless. Not only that, but it extends beyond the human race. I mean, any extraterrestrial will have that same consciousness. Any non-physical being would have that same consciousness. So, you know, it really is a way to get beyond the different things that limit us and help maintain such a fragmented society that allows things like war and you know, caste systems and things like that has the world in the way that it has been for thousands of years. So I really think the fact that these things are coming to the forefront is an indication of a shift in consciousness, a shift in the way of thinking that is pretty much allowing these things to resurface. And I think what's going to happen is our terminology will change. Like words like supernatural will have no more meaning because we will recognize these things as just natural. You know, just like eventually race will have no meaning. You know, you won't be a black person and a white person and a Chinese person. You'll just be a human being, you know, an earth human being. You know, and what planet are you from? You know, so I really think our whole vocabulary will change to start to reflect, you know, these interchanges that we have that's allowing these topics to come to the forefront. You know,
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
You know, and I think our vocabulary is changing already. I mean, geez, I don't know how many new words have been created just in the last 4 or 5 years through this type of research. You know, the people that are looking into, you know, spirituality, the soul, the energy, quantum physics. I mean, things like, well, here's the exopolitics. There's a new word. I mean, we've got all sorts of new words that are being coined to help to describe these experiences and better describe these experiences and these phenomena in our lives and in a way that is not divisive. You know, I think you follow what I'm saying there.
That's right.
Anyways,
That's right. I agree.
I apologize for the dogs going off a couple of minutes ago. My nephew and a friend of his from work have showed up, and they may be tossing in a question or two during this show. So,
okay.
We have Jake and Greg here with us also. So, just so you know.
Okay.
Very cool. So, going back to the telepathy thing, you know, because there's always the thought that only those who have, you know, when you talk about telepathy in these circles, there's always the one common thread that I hear about it, and it's always like, oh, you know, you shouldn't pay attention to that because then you get unfocused from becoming enlightened. Once you become enlightened, then that just gets easy, and I can never understand that because to me, telepathy was always like learning a new language. You know, you don't wait till you become enlightened to learn how to speak English or Spanish or whatever language you may speak. So I always looked at telepathy as another skill, not really as a spiritual thing as people made it sound.
I agree.
You know, it's a skill like writing or something like that. So one of the questions that I have for you about telepathy is how did you, what was the techniques you used in order to develop it?
It was a long time, but if I remember, it was basically just opening up and listening. just opening up and being aware. My understanding of it is, especially since then, since I've studied other things like A Course in Miracles about the mind, all minds are already joined. So telepathy is less of an effort to hear someone else's thought and more of a cessation of putting up barriers between each other. So the idea that we cannot hear each other's thoughts is really an imposition that we're putting on ourselves to help facilitate the idea and belief that we're separate. That's why if you speak with anyone who's had contact with advanced extraterrestrial races, all of them are telepathic. You know, one of your shows I listened to was an awesome show with Lisa Royale. You know, the Pleiadians, they're telepathic. She spoke about Bashar with the Society. They're all telepathic, right? Because they have less of an investment in separation and third density, so that barrier is not there. So at the time, I was doing a lot of things, which I still do, but I was doing a lot of things like focusing on loving people, forgiving, letting go of barriers. You know, and if you just open up and listen, it's just there. You know, the communication is there. It's just like a radio. You know, there's always frequencies going on all the time. But if you don't turn your dial to that station, you're not going to hear it. So what we usually do is we simply turn our radio off. So really our radio is off so we can block that out. You know, which is understandable because, like I said, it started to become very disconcerting. You know, as well as the fact that so often people say things people act and say things that are contrary to their inner feelings. So that was concerning as well. You know, if you're speaking with someone and they'll say something else and you can hear subconsciously they're saying something else, and you wait a day or two and sure enough they really believe whatever the thing they was thinking unconsciously, you know. So, you know, it could be disconcerting, but what's going to happen is as we start to align our inner selves with our outer selves more, that'll help the process as well, because there's also the fact is, you know, if someone's telling you something and they consciously don't want you to know what they really feel, they're kind of putting up a wall at the same time, so there's some of that. What's going to happen is as we start to align our inner selves and outer selves more to the point that there's really no difference between our inner and outer selves. There's no barriers within ourselves that are also facilitated as well. And but it's really there. Those communications always are coming through. All you have to do is just when you speak with people, just open up your mind and listen. Another exercise they gave is when let's say you're sitting around and you're doing something and you're not thinking about anyone, you're not thinking about this particular person, and they keep popping in your mind, chances are they're thinking about you. And if you just put yourself into a quiet state and just open your mind to hear what's coming through, you'll often pick up things. And what will happen is the next time you speak with that person, you know, let's say somebody might pop into your mind. And we've often experienced this. Somebody pops into your mind and they call 5 minutes later. That's a pretty common one. But it might start to become more detailed, where someone pops into your mind and you go back to focusing on whatever you focus on, and they pop into your mind again. And you say, "Oh, this person must be thinking about me." So you relax and you open up your mind, and let's say you start thinking about a baby. You start hearing about a baby, and you just start, you know, this idea of a baby comes into your mind. And the person might call 5 minutes later and tell you their wife was pregnant, for instance. So you'll start noticing things like that. So it's just a matter of opening up to the communication that's already there. That's basically what the idea was. And if you just practice doing that more and more, and next thing you know, thoughts will be coming in from everywhere. You know.
Right. It starts clarifying. You know, that my biggest challenge with the whole telepathy thing has been that duplicity within other people, as you mentioned earlier. You know, have reading one thing and sensing one thing, and them voicing something different.
That's right.
So, you know, and I think this is, you know, as we're developing these things, I think we also, at least for me personally, I found that I have to use my discernment. I have to definitely use my discernment when practicing this out in the world with those that I'm not very intimate with. where I can't openly speak with. I have to be very, very discreet with how I deal with the things that are coming through, especially when they're of startling nature. If you get something really disturbing from somebody, you don't just blurt it out there. We do have to realize where we're still at here on planet Earth and where the rest of society is at in their own development. I mean, the people, the percentage of us that are truly, truly and in earnest seeking and trying to develop these things is pretty damn small on the planet right now. I mean, those numbers are growing, but there still is.
That's right.
We are still a very small sliver of the pie. So I guess what I wanted to put out there was that discernment factor that we do have to use when we're trying to learn and develop these for ourselves, and also not let the lack of confirmation in those types of things discourage you. Because I've also gone up against that wall myself, where I get a real tough nut to crack, where I'm receiving one thing and they're saying something else, and then when you pry into it or try to draw that out, you meet that wall.
That's right.
You can't let that beat you down and make you go, oh, this is all baloney, and what I'm getting is wrong. It's all wrong. You're just gonna have to take a deep breath and just move on. So.
Yeah. I was gonna mention that yesterday I actually experienced that 2 times. I actually called, text a friend of mine's, and I told her about something that we were like waiting for, and she was like, "I was just gonna text you to ask you about that." And then, yeah, and then the other one was even funnier because I had for lunch this fried. It's like fried pork with an egg on top. I live in Japan, so it's like a popular dish here, on top of rice. And when my wife that's what I had for lunch. When my wife got home, she was like, that's what I wanted for dinner. And she said that she had that in her mind all day, that's what she wanted for dinner.
Awesome.
But I had it for lunch. So there's many occasions where, especially between close friends, families, and lovers, that increases more.
Right.
Is that because I've always heard, because when 2 people get involved, whether a friendship or relationship, their energies start to mix more. Is it because of that, or what do you think?
My experience and understanding of it is simply that we let those barriers down with that person. We have this idea that everybody is a stranger except for these 2 people. Everybody is a stranger except for my family and my friends and my lover. So these people, we let those barriers down, and we're more willing to listen, right? How often do, a person, a family member or a friend could be going through a hardship, and we'll treat that person like us, but, somebody down the street or across the planet could be going through the same hardship, and we don't pay our mind at all. So it's simply that we're not paying attention. We're not paying attention to these other people, and we're not opening ourselves up to these other people, right? So what happens is, because we're selective in opening up, we mistake that to mean that there's some kind of special thing going on between this person, when really we're selectively choosing who we're going to open up to, and selectively choosing who we're going to really listen to, right? Because chances are, if we have a lover, if we're in a deep relationship, we really want to hear that person. We want to know what that person is feeling, because we love that person, we care about that person. We want to be able to meet that person's needs, and the same thing with that person. So they want to know what you're thinking. Right? They want to know. I mean, that's one of the biggest complaints about relationships. We don't communicate. We want to know. One or the other, if they're having that problem, want to know what the other person is thinking. So we want to know what our lover is thinking. We want to know what our children is thinking. So we're open to these people, and they're open to us. The thing about societies like the Palladian society and the Science society, they see everyone on the planet as their family. right? If you ever listen to Bashar talk about that society, he says everyone on that planet is in love with everyone. There's no mistake that the planet is telepathic. It's not because they have some kind of special thing. It's because they're allowing that connection that's already there to be there. That's all it is. So what's going to happen is, as we start to recognize every single person on Earth as our brother, as our sister, as our lover, in a sense that, we have love for this person, a universal love for this person. When we see this person as important to us as our lover. That doesn't mean we have to sleep with everybody on the planet, but we have the same amount of care. You understand what I'm saying? We have that same universal love for everybody. We see everybody as our family, and those barriers will go down, and that telepathic connection that's already there, we'll be aware of it. So it's not really a something special. It's that we're especially letting those boundaries go. So that's why it's often there between lovers and all, because we let those boundaries go.
Yeah, I think one of the issues with that too is that the word love is so misconstrued in what it means, and for a lot of people, the word love doesn't mean, the caring for someone. It means the chances of getting hurt, or it just means, straight up pain. For a lot of people, that, that's what that word means to them. So I think it's one of the reasons why the shutdown, if I'm too open when I'm walking in the street, then I become vulnerable to attacks and all sorts of things. That goes the same with the spiritual community, where you have to create this bubble to shut yourself down from psychic vampires or psychic attacks, and so on and so forth. Do you feel that has any truth for you, or how do you?
I think that the love that most people are talking about are really not love. I remember Byron Katie talked about the romantic love that we have, which means that I want to get something from you. I want to possess you. So really, when we speak about love, even with the people we think we love, we're not really talking about love. And we can see that when the person doesn't do what we want them to do. That person that we love, when they no longer do what we want them to do, or they do something that we don't want them to do, that love very quickly turns to hate, which means is what it really was. Love, if it's really love, is unconditional, and it's there. Whether we have a romantic relationship with this person or not, is there whether we're family or not, and that same universal love can be applied or manifested in different forms. So you can have that same universal love with a person that's your lover, and it'll manifest in different ways in that relationship. You can have that same universal love with, your next door neighbor and the person around the world, and it'll manifest in ways to fit that form, right? But what happens is, if someone does something we don't like, and we're hurt, or if we fear we're going to be hurt, then we know that there's something tainted about the love that we feel. There's something selfish. There's something that's not fully on par with what I think I'm feeling, and that's what I think the issue is. We think we're talking about love, but when we're really talking about conditional love, third density love, right? And that's where you have the give or take, hurt or be hurt. Do what I want you to do and I love you, meet my conditions, and if you don't, I don't love you. So often relationships in our world evolve into that. The first month or so or year, everything is like heaven, but so often after that year, more conditions come out, more stipulations come out, more judgments come out. We found out that the person hid things about themselves, like a relationship I was in, certain likes that she had, she pretended not to have because she think I wasn't going to like it. Certain dislikes she had, she pretended not to have because she thought I wasn't going to like it. So, after we were a year together, and I started hearing, I don't really like to do that. Well, we've been doing this for a year. What are you talking about? It's one of the things I thought we had in common. So, so that wasn't really love. What we had on the first day wasn't really love because that person didn't really love themselves. So often we don't really love ourselves, and then we hide who we are we present a false picture to try to get, because again, that love is about getting, about owning, right? And it's not really love in the first place. You know, it's not really love in the first place. You know, true love is there regardless, which means if I truly have an unconditional love and there's no conditions, that means it's there whether you're there with me or not. The love that I have for me is there regardless. So whether you're with me or not, it's equal. And that's the difference between third density love and fourth density love. I mean, third density love says if we're together, then there's gain. So if you're gone, there's loss, so I miss you. Not to mention if you're gone and you're with somebody else. You know, so often in relationships today, there's a stipulation that you can't, you know, I don't want you to hang around that person anymore. That person is your ex. You know, they don't want to get with you again. I don't want you to have friends of the opposite sex, right? Right? Because really, it's not really love. It's about ownership. It's about protecting ourselves from the lack that we feel inside, the emptiness that we feel inside, which no one else can ever do, right? So what happens is the emptiness we have inside, we project it out onto that person, and we think because of what that person did, they hurt me. Or if I open myself too much, they're going to hurt me. You know, but whenever I read or learn about people who are absolutely open, you know, like Byron Katie or you know, people like that, or Mother Teresa, they're completely open and they're impervious to being hurt. You know, they're absolutely impervious to being hurt. Because they're really based upon that true love. So I really think that we have to make a big paradigm shift so we can understand what love is and realize the fact that often what we think is love is simply just possessiveness or selfishness. You know, but when we truly are in that love, then it won't matter. You know, that's why there's no jealousy in like the Palladian society, because they realize that whether they're with someone else or not, that love is still unites everyone. Everyone is united regardless. So whether I'm with you or not, that love is there. You know, whether you leave or not, that love is there. Whatever you do or don't do, I'm complete within myself. So how can I possibly be hurt? You know, so all of that really has to do with the individual that's afraid of being hurt. You know, that's where the pain really lies. And when that emptiness is healed inside, then you know, all there is openness, because you know that's what love is. That's one of the things that love is. You know, so that's why the most advanced people we could think of, you know, they were always spoke about love. You know, I don't know if you're religious or not. I don't consider myself religious myself as spiritual, but I mean, in my experience and understanding, Jesus was a real person on earth, and by all accounts, I mean, he was a very loving and spiritual person. You know, Mother Teresa, Byron Katie, so many spiritual personages in India, and they were very open and loving. You know, so that's my perspective on it.
Yeah, no, I'm sure a lot of people in the audience are going, wow.
Well, very well said, and thank you.
Very well said.
Thank you.
I'm glad we're recording.
Yeah, I think, you know, I think one of the things that we do to ourselves in all of our relationships, you know, both the intimate and the casual relationships that we have, is we sabotage ourselves with our own fears. And you know, and those fears that you pointed out there, we project that out there into the world, and we help create it. We help create those fears that create turmoil within our own lives.
That's right, and that's the painful part of it. I mean, we blame the outside world, but really the world is the effect of what we have inside, and until we heal inside, we'll continue to see the same projections over and over and over, because it's the effect. So, but that's the benefit, you know. Once we start to realize that, then we can start to utilize those experiences, and instead of trying to fix it again in the world, we can say, what am I thinking? What am I believing that's causing me to interpret things in this way, so that we can let go of those interpretations, and then things start to become more and more easy, more and more free, you know.
Yeah. Well, let me talk to you about empaths, because I've met a few empaths, and Tom himself had an experience where for example, a friend of mine, we were hanging out outside of this bar, and this woman walked by, and she looked normal. I mean, from the outside appearance, nothing special, and he started to cry. And what it was is that she was so distraught inside that he can pick that up, that he started, you know, crying. for a lot of empaths, it's really difficult for them, and they just have to end up shutting it down completely because they just can't handle it. And you know, Tom had the experience. Tom, actually, you told him the experience.
The fairgrounds?
Yeah, that was in Seattle, right?
Yeah, it was actually here at the Southwest Washington Fair. Yeah, I'm pretty tapped in energetically when I focus on stuff. I can really I have a pretty good on-off switch. So my girlfriend and I had gone to the local county fair, and it was I guess it was a Friday night or Saturday night. Anyways, it was pretty packed, and we were just walking through the crowd, and I told her, I said, I'm going to open up and just kind of put my feelers out there and see what happens. And so I stopped, and I just standing there in the middle of the crowd. I closed my eyes, and I just opened everything up and just started soaking it, just started sensing. And I was so overwhelmed. I mean, it was like, oh my God. I mean, it was so much that my back started hurting. My legs started shaking. My whole body just got, I got really, really wore out immediately. It was quite a startling event. And I tried to shut it off, 5 seconds later, and I was able to shut most of it down, but it had such a lasting effect on me that I was spent for the rest of that night. We'd only been there for, not even an hour at that point, and I was like, I have to go. So I guess, on the positive side of that, I realized that I do have a pretty good on-off switch and am able to turn it off. But when you focus in, I guess you got to be careful with what you do with this stuff, because you can take yourself into some pretty unpleasant and uncomfortable places.
Yeah, and my question behind that story is because it almost sounds like you're saying kind of the opposite, and I'm wondering what is it, because I've experienced a similar thing too as Tom. What is it that might be doing wrong or not doing that we're getting overwhelmed by these crowds?
I would say those things are two different experiences. Like in the first situation with the empath, like the person was just walking by, and this person, he became overwhelmed with the negative feelings, right?
Yeah.
And he wasn't trying to listen to her or feel her out. She just walked by and he just sensed it and became overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Right? So I would say that in my experience, we could only become overwhelmed or with something that's already within us. Like there's absolutely no way that anything in the world could affect us in a negative way unless we've already ourselves chosen that negative interpretation, right? Otherwise, in a sense, there could be no such thing as spiritual advancement, because, you would have to have a world of spiritual masters in order to experience spiritual mastery, because everybody around you would be constantly bringing you down otherwise. So what that means is that we have the ability to choose our own experience. Right, so that person had to already have pain inside to have that resonate with him. Otherwise, he would not be able to resonate. Which does not mean he would not be able to perceive what that person is feeling, but it would be a perception that'll still be different from his own core. He would have to have that in his core already in order to experience that. A good example is, in the same relationship I was telling you about. I never cheated on this woman, but she always thought I was cheating. And no matter what I did, she thought I was cheating. It had nothing to do with me. It had to do with her own internal beliefs, right? So all that person that walked by did was be a symbol of what this person already had in themselves. Otherwise, they would not be able to get overwhelmed with it, right? Mm-hmm. So if I was that person, I would look into myself and say, wow, what is this fear I must have inside of me to where this is resonating with me so strongly? And when I question my own fear, my own hatred, or whatever that negative emotion is, and I start to undo it within myself, someone else's negativity simply will not be able to overwhelm us. As a matter of fact, it'll start to happen the other way. We'll start to be a symbol of peace or fearlessness. We'll start to be able to be and that person that they can choose differently. I don't have to be this sad and depressed. There's absolutely no way. There's absolutely no way you could overwhelm Byron Katie with sadness. There's no way you could overwhelm her with anger. And people have asked her, how can you be so open? I mean, aren't you afraid? Just like you said earlier, those fears. She said, I've been like this way for 30 years and nothing has happened, but I'm open to it. Yeah, what she would say, but I'm open to it, So there's no way you can do that. Just like in my understanding of Yeshua with the Course in Miracles, he felt no fear, no pain, because he so thoroughly cleared out that negativity within himself. So since there was no negativity in him, there was no way. It's like we're all tuning forks. And the only way someone can make us resonate a certain way is if we already have a tuning fork within us of that frequency. Once we get rid of that tuning fork, we can acknowledge and recognize that someone else is resonating with that, but there's no way that tuning fork is going to be able to resonate with ours or make ours resonate because we're on a different frequency. But we can become a symbol or an example of the fact that that person can make the same choice, right? Now, with Tom's experience, you opened up. You opened up and let all that in, and it's just like with anything. You could drink too much water.
Exactly.
And you will be overwhelmed. If you just open up your mouth and let somebody pour water down your throat, you're going to have problems after a while. Somebody even died from drinking too much water. So the fact is, we in a sense, we have a circuitry, and that circuitry, it could take so much voltage until we develop it. One good example of this is at one time I was doing chakra work. This I guess was about 10 years ago. And I decided to overstimulate my brow chakra and my crown chakra at the top of my head to see what happened. And I spent some time just putting all kind of attention and just putting awareness and stirring and stimulating my crown chakra. And it got to the point where suddenly my head just started burning. My head just started burning. And it felt like somebody took a pot of oil. Like they just not finished frying up some food and had a pot of hot oil and just poured it on top of my head. And the hot oil just started running down to my brow and my crown chakra. And that's what it felt like for like a day. And whenever I thought about the top of my head, it just started burning for like a week or two. It took like a week or two for my non-physical body to heal because I so overwhelmed my circuitry with energy. So I think that's what you did. Yeah. You went from a position of not consciously being telepathic so much, maybe you might be telepathic with your wife or what have you, to stepping into a crowd of hundreds of thousands of people and letting all those vibrations run through you. That's like taking a regular appliance and plugging it straight into the power company. That thing is going to get overwhelmed with that trigger. Those wires are going to burn out. So that's just a situation of plugging yourself, taking a 10-volt cord and plugging it into a 1,000 volt power circuit, and that's all that was. Yeah. So
it was an experiment, and it definitely was an experiment, and I learned. So we are at the top of the hour.
Let me just ask one more question.
Okay.
Well, one more, and then we'll shut down. With the same kind of I forgot. Never mind. Okay.
It'll come back. I'll do that.
You can start the next hour out with that, Ramon. You'll figure it out during our break here.
It just burned out.
All right. So, Darryl, the book's coming out on June 20th. Everything's still looking good for that date?
Everything's looking good for that date.
All right. And
I'll make sure I send you to a copy.
Yes.
All right. So www.darrylberryjr.com. That's DarrylBerryJR.com. And there are links on the info for wherever you're listening to this at. So anyways, we're going to come back and, honest guys, we will talk about out-of-body travel in the next hour. Oh, but this was some good stuff, Darryl. Thank you.
Oh, this was amazing.
And, Yeah, I think Darryl's definitely made it on my A-list. So, all right, guys, we are going to take a short break, and we will be back in hour 2. If you are out there listening on one of those other media formats, then I would urge you to pop on over to www.the100thmonkeyradio.com and consider being a member and helping to support Ramon and I and all that we're doing. And, yeah, good stuff. Hundreds and hundreds of hours of stuff there, too, by the way.
Yeah.
We will see you guys in hour 2. Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance.
The love you deny is the pain you carry. So we'll be back as quick as you can press that next button.
Namaste, man.
Stop and feel that you've been missing along the way. Put aside your petty fight, serve your dignity. You've got to show the heart that you've been hiding and set it free. There's just one cure, world gone wrong. We only love it. And if the cure for one is the cure for us all, there's an urgent message trying to reach you. Excuse yourself and pick up the call. You gotta pick up the call. You came the same way the very next day. The words they just kept on coming through. Hard to conceive if you believe me. This is what you really want to do. You got to tune into your inner being. Now let it be. You got to activate your inner vision. Now let it see. Cast out the doubt, the mindless chatter. Now let it go. It's time to tap into the heart of the matter. 'Cause don't you know there's just one cure in a world gone wrong. We only love it. And if the cure for one is the cure for all, step right up and don't be shy. Excuse yourself and pick up the call. You gotta pick up the call. Complicated, it's really all quite simple in the end. You got to tune into your inner being. Now let it be. You got to activate your inner vision. Now let it see. Cast out the doubt, the mindless chatter. Now let it go. It's time to tap into the heart of the matter. 'Cause don't you know there's just one cure in a world gone wrong. Up and don't be shy. Got to look yourself right in the eye. There's a magic moment trying to meet you, an urgent message trying to reach you. The phone is ringing off the wall, so pick up the call. You gotta pick up the call.